for backbends. In the last video, we looked at the idea of keeping our feet hip distance apart and parallel, why we did that and what that meant, and then keeping our knees over our ankles, our hips over our knees, so that we had a nice straight line with all of our joints, allowing that tailbone to drop down. And we looked at mountain pose and how if we have our feet hip distance apart and parallel to this between our ankles, how if we stand in our mountain pose and we root through our feet evenly, we engage our thigh muscles by lifting our quads up, contracting them up and away from the kneecap, and then lifting our shoulders, drawing our shoulder blades in, pulling them down our spine, arms out to the sides, palms facing out. Mountain pose is a back bend. And it's a back bend with this lower half of our body as we root down the tailbone. Rooting downward toward the mat allows for this natural curve of our spine and our lower back. And then when we lift our shoulders, draw our shoulder blades in and pull them down, this is the upper back bend with our rib cage lifting upward. And as we inhale and lengthen the spine and grow, the more we inhale and lengthen, the bigger we come into the back bend. The more we exhale and root down, we allow that tailbone to stabilize and have a nice strong base so that with our next inhale, we can lift and lengthen and open bigger and more expansive. And we brought that to the wall, again with our feet hip distanced apart and parallel. And this time here, I welcomed you to use any kind of an arm variation, whether your arms are out to the sides or cactus arms or arms straight up. I like to do the cactus arms. So again, I'm rooting through both feet evenly. I'm engaging those quads. So I'm contracting them up and away from my kneecap. And then inhale, lifting the shoulders. Exhale, shoulder blades draw in and pull down. And now I'm in the back bend, and I just breathe into this. So there's one more part I want to add into this before we bring this into a modified camel against the wall. And that's focusing on this lower abdomen part. Because what can happen if I'm standing in my back bend or my mountain posture, right? I'm rooting through, my quads are engaged, I'm lifting my shoulders, wrapping my shoulder blades around my spine, right? And as I breathe here, you may notice that I'm pushing my stomach forward so that my spine is giving the facade that the whole thing is in a bend. And instead, I'm just stressing out this whole section right here. It's going to get angry. Because instead of actually lengthening up and then bending, it's actually just as you're trying to bend it, it's just compressing the vertebrae of the spine together in this middle section. So we want to make sure that we protect that part of our spine, and we do that by a couple of things. So one thing would be drawing your abdomen in toward the spine. So your belly button is, if you imagine a little string, pulling that string back towards your spine, right? So if I have my stomach, I'll protrude it a little bit more just so you can get a better kind of visual. And just imagine that string at the back of your belly button, and it's pulling in toward the spine, right? That's done on an exhale. That's toning your abdomen, right? And if you're breathing your Ujjayi breath, you're already toning your abdomen, and you want to really make sure you're maintaining that to protect this part of your spine. But the other part we need to make sure that we're focusing on is our pelvic floor, right? We don't want to push our pelvis forward to kind of emphasize this low back part of our bend, because as I said, we're just compressing this chunk of vertebrae here. So instead, we want to make sure that we're lengthening and then bending, right? And the way that we do that is our pelvic floor. So if we start off by drawing your belly button in towards your spine, you'll notice that your tailbone drops downward between your hips, which is what you want, right? And so that's part one. And then the next part is internal. It's your pelvic floor literally sliding forward so that it allows that tailbone to continue to lengthen downward toward the mat or toward the earth. So your pelvic floor literally is at the bottom of your torso, right? And so I always talk about this as, you know, pulling your pants, your underwear or your panties forward, right? So if I'm doing this on the inside internally, then I'm sliding my pelvic floor forward and then pulling them up toward my belly button. And this is then that drawing your abdomen in toward your spine. So your tailbone drops and then you continue that action, right? So it's a circular motion coming from the back, forward, up, back and down, right? So circular motion this way. So again, if I'm in this mountain pose, accentuating the back bend, I'm rooting through both feet evenly. I'm engaging my quads so they're lifting away from the kneecap. And then we'll come into this shoulder action. So with your inhale, lifting your shoulders. Exhale, draw your shoulder blades in and pull them down your spine. And then start by drawing your abdomen in so that tailbone naturally drops, and then extend that movement by pulling your underwear forward so that pelvic floor from the inside pulls forward and up. Now I'm in this back bend. Now I just want to breathe with that. Inhale, lengthening. Exhale, breathing, rooting downward. And as I root downward, I tone in more. And when I inhale, I lengthen more. But if you notice, the whole time my belly is toning inward as opposed to pushing forward and out. So you can continue to practice with that against the wall, right? Doing everything that we've been doing, rooting through your feet. My feet are hip distance apart and parallel already. Quads are lifted. Inhale, lift my shoulders. Exhale, shoulder blades wrap my spine. Shoulder blades come down. And then I want to pull my abdomen in toward my spine. Tailbone drops, and now I'm pulling my pelvic floor forward and up. So you'll see that my belly isn't pressing in, but it's my low abdomen. My pelvis that's pressing into the mat as I open into this back bend. So you can stay there with that, or the next step would be to bring it into a camel pose. And so when we bring it into a camel posture, we want to make sure that our feet stay hip distance apart, right? So the idea is that if I were to bring my feet together here and have my heels and my hips, then they would line up, right? The other thing that's really important is that I don't want my knees to cave inward toward each other, and I don't want my knees to be wide, because if they're too wide, then I'm not going to be able to engage that pelvic floor, and my hips are going to just come forward, and again, I'm going to compress that low part of my spine. And if I bring them in too close, the exact same thing as if our feet are toes touching, our hips are going to turn in and our tailbone will jam, so our bum will stick back. So, you want to make sure your feet are approximately hip distance apart and parallel so that your hips are over your knees. And then I want you to notice this other part of it, right? We want to keep our, let me turn that up, that's better. I want you to notice my thighs. A lot of people lean back and they think they're like, yeah, I'm in this awesome back bend, and they throw their head back. Well, we'll talk about the next time. But this isn't camel. You'll notice it's a very stressful position for your legs and probably your head and neck, because literally you're tearing the ligaments away. They're trying to hold on to support you. A back bend is your spine bending, so that doesn't mean leaning back. That means keeping your hips over your knees, and in fact, your hips might come a little bit forward more as you breathe into the pose, right? So in order to do that, I need to keep my feet active, just like they would be in my mountain pose. So I need to keep my toes tucked under and pressing through the balls of my feet, so I'm rooting through my feet. There's a big difference between this and this. I can press the tops of my feet into the mat, but I'm still not getting the same power as if my toes are tucked under, okay? So now it's the exact same thing as in the mountain pose. I'm rooting through my feet evenly. I'm engaging my quads so they're lifting, and as I do that, my hips will kind of slide forward a little bit. I'm going to inhale, lift my shoulders. Exhale, draw shoulder blades in toward each other and pull them down my spine. And then that abdomen, that low part, we're going to draw our belly button in toward our spine so the tailbone drops, and then pulling your pelvic floor forward and up. And so that is a camel pose. And then coming into different arm variations, we'll get to that later on in the series, probably closer to, the end when we're putting all of the pieces together. But for right now, to just practice coming against the wall to really measure the fact that you're not leaning into it and you're really keeping everything engaged. So again, just like using the wall to stand, rooting through your feet evenly, quads are engaged. Inhale, lift your shoulders. Exhale, draw your shoulder blades in, pull them down your spine. Now draw your abdomen in toward your spine, tailbone drops down, and then pulling your pelvic floor forward and up, and continuing to breathe in this. And then I just want to show you the difference. So here I am in my back bend as my feet are engaged. As soon as I disengage them, notice how I come back deeper, but I slump into it. And you should try that on your own just to feel that strain that happens in your low back. You want to make sure that you counter this a little bit. You don't want to tuck yourself up into a little ball, but a downward facing dog is fantastic. Or you can come into a cat and cow and neutralize your spine that way. You can always, if you're at home and you have stairs, you can be on the top stair and just let one leg post, one leg hang, and then you can do the other leg and let that leg hang. And these will be ways to release that spine so you don't have any achiness as you're developing your muscles. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Have a great day.